Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the $10 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I am co-founder of Financing Solutions. Over the last 25 years, I have built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range. And I can't tell you how important it is for businesses to have a line of credit so they can make an investment in their business or even for unexpected emergencies. Our line of credit program is easy to get in place, inexpensive when used, and costs nothing to set up, making it a great cash backup plan. If you'd like to learn more about our line of credit program, please visit us at fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. If you apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file. Just remember that the time to set up your line of credit is before you need it, so that way you have it when you do need it. Today, I am very excited to be speaking with Beate Chelette from Chelette Enterprises, also known as the Growth Architect. Beate is the growth architect and founder of the Women's Code and provides strategy, blueprints, and results-oriented tangible tools and techniques that unify your teams, give you clear steps to improve your business systems, and strengthen your leadership skills. A first-generation immigrant who found herself $135,000 in debt as a single parent, Beate bootstrapped her passion for photography into a highly successful global business and eventually sold it to Bill Gates in a multi-million-dollar deal. She is among the top 100 global thought leaders by PeopleHum and one of the 50 most followed women entrepreneurs by Huffington Post. Beate, welcome to today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
Thanks, Steve, for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, so this is actually the second time I've had you on. I had you on talking about a different process than the one we're going to be talking today. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 pillars of alignment for business growth. And the one that we covered last time was it was called the 5-Star Success Blueprint. And I asked you to come back on because what I was so impressed with was how simple you made the process and of growing your organization, of building your team, of being a leader. And, you know, the problem I think in business is that we make things very, very complicated. Right. And I understand why. We all read all these things. We listen to these podcasts. We watch these shows. And, you get a million ideas a minute, right? Every day you're coming up with something new. And it's very distractive. You sometimes just need to do one thing and be great at it and then move on to the next thing. But yet we don't do that very well, do we?
Well, I mean, you nailed sort of the biggest shiny object problem most entrepreneurs have. I call it entrepreneurial ADD. And it is because we're constantly looking how to improve our businesses. And so, as you said, we read, we listen to a podcast, and any good marketer or any good business owner out there says, get my thing. And that's the only thing you need. And if you only have this one thing, then everything will fall into place. I call that BS because I have learned that the thing that you need is the thing that you need at that moment when you're in that particular rhythm of your business, or when that is a priority, or when that needs to be updated. And so the 5-Star Success Blueprint, you're absolutely correct. I designed because there was, whenever I talk to entrepreneurs, and, in their, whatever, that the million mark, the 2 million mark, they want to get through the 5 to the 10. And then they go and they make it so incredibly complicated. And I say, well, but what's the idea, right? What are we going to get back to? What's the vision you have? Because that we need to tell everybody about. Well, and then they go into this big explanation. And then I tell them, well, Albert Einstein always said, if you can't say it in one sentence, you don't understand it well enough. And then they go into these complicated sales process, and they get caught up with how to compensate salespeople on percentages and draws and caps and things like that. And I'm like, okay, everybody just calm down. Let's go back to the basics. What's the idea? What's the offer? Because you need to know what the idea is and who wants it so you can sell it to that person. And then you need to figure out, what does this person buy? That drives what you're selling and how you're selling it. Then you talk about, how do I build systems that actually support that? Then you go to your team, says who can do it? And then you look at yourself and you say, am I shifting out of the micromanager, can do it all, king of my business or queen of my business, to the actual leader? And then you start all over again. So you're absolutely correct. It's really not that complicated. I didn't say it was easy, but it's not complicated. But you must follow the steps. You can't sell before the idea is flushed out. You can't build a system unless you know what the system is being built for. And so that's always been my goal, to take these complex processes that get so convoluted by how people talk about it, because it's internet marketing talk, and say it's really not difficult. Just follow this. That's it.
Yeah, I think, listen, I think that's where a business coach is probably the most valuable, if you select the right business coach. And that is, a business coach isn't inside your business. And so, hopefully they can keep you on track. The problem is, listen, if you have a business partner, maybe you guys can play off of each other and stay focused. Sometimes it doubles the amount of ideas you have. But, I always feel that in the early phase of a business, you have the ideas, but then after that, it's all about execution, and execution requires it to be very focused. And again, I just remember when I was first started my career and as an entrepreneur, like for the first 10 or 15 years, my team hated when I went away to conferences, because I'd come back with a million ideas, right? And I'm actually pretty good at execution. So, I learned when I go away, I'd circle three things out of my pages of new ideas. And I'd say, okay, these are the best three ideas. These are the ones we're going to implement. And then, if we do that well, then I'll look back at the other things. So let's talk about the ideas that you have behind the three pillars of alignment for business growth.
Yes. So, to your point, I want to just add something to what you just said. So I believe that the strategic aspect of how you run your business is critical. It is the single most important thing. That's the foundation of everything. And so we are, very much like what you said. I believe that it's important to flush out everything and to brainstorm on all the ideas you have. I call this, like, we take the plane to 30,000 feet. We look at the terrain, we look at all the airports in the area, and we fly over it, and then we decide where we're going to land the plane first. Doesn't mean that you can't map out the trip to hit all of these airports, but you got to start somewhere first. And so that is really the foundation of what I build, is like, what's the overall strategy that we start with. So the business alignment was born out of, as I've been working on this 5-star success blueprint, I looked at sort of what happens when the business grows. So when the business growth, starts to accelerate, we are now seeing that these silos are starting to happen, which is the nightmare of every business owner, because then suddenly people don't communicate. Everybody's so busy, and you find these pieces in there that are not working together. So I came up with this idea of, like, what is it that needs to be aligned for a business owner to quickly recognize where they need to go first to fix it, because we see this in miscommunication. We see this in a lack of engagement, a lack of retention. We see it with this great resignation insanity right now, where everybody's trying to find a new job. I think like over 40% of the workforce are out looking for a job if they haven't quit already. And the only way you can counteract this, if you have alignment where people are connected to the business, what you do, and if you have a pulse on what's going on. But business owners are freaking out because of all these other issues with the supply chain and the talent shortage and access to capital. Thank God you're part of that and helping them to do that. I was chuckling when you said get the money when you don't need it, when you can. This is part of what I teach. Is like until you cannot wait. You cannot wait to ask for money when you need it because nobody will give it to you when you need it. You have to get it when you don't need it because then everybody's throwing it at you.
Well, the
So
problem is that until you've been through that process, you really don't know how hard it is to get money from a, like I say, from a traditional bank,
oh,
right?
the worst.
It's really hard. I've been through it a lot, and my own businesses that I've had in the past, and it is, the things that they want, is crazy. And so, anyway, continue your thought process that
Yeah.
you
So
had.
so so that was a part of it. So business alignment is has three pillars to it. So the first pillar of alignment is the business development piece, because a lot of businesses have this sine wave where they get really busy and they stop the business development because they're busy executing the jobs. And then as they execute the jobs, there's no pipeline. So, business development has to be on an ongoing basis, and you have to learn how to align this properly so that it it trickles through just at the right cadence, or trickles through in such a way that you can grow your business. Because if you want to double your business from $5 to $10 million, that's considered a quantum leap. So if you map out a growth at whatever 10% a year to get to the 10 million, it's going to take you a long time. But a quantum leap can get you from 5 to 10 million in what, a year? But you'll have to map that out. So the business development alignment piece has three elements of the 5-star success blueprint. And the first piece is the idea, the second piece is the offer, and the third piece is the system. So again, you have to be clear what it is that you're doing, who you're doing it for. That has to be aligned with what you're selling and how you're selling it. And then finally, you have to have the systems that support that. And systems are not just systems that we see typically in automation, the CRM, but system also your system of lead generation and your system of how do you find clients? Are you finding them in trade conferences, which is very difficult right now, through your chamber of commerce, through cold calling, a LinkedIn strategy, through podcasting, through this technique that we call borrowing other people's audiences by being guests on podcasts. What's that strategy that has to be built into the system on how you go and make sure that you're always in front of people. So for my business, we choose podcasting, as I know you have chosen, as lead generation, because it is there's a repetition. People keep hearing your name again and again and again. You give value, which is part of one of the universal principles of success, the giving principle. If you give, you will receive. So and for us, we also have a LinkedIn strategy. We have an executive roundtable strategy that we use where we get C-level executives on the table to build these relationships and provide value about current things that are going on in the market. And so these have to be aligned. So that's the part of the business development. Do you want to follow up on any of this? Because I know you always have a question.
Well, it's not a question, but I do have a comment. I would say I'm so glad you led with business development, which of course is sales, and because I think that I'm a big proponent of the idea that if you don't have great lead generation, if you don't have anything that can acquire clients cheaply, then you don't have a business. Like you can have the best product, you can have the best service, but if you don't have people coming to you, you're going to have a really hard time being successful or growing that business. Number one, so I really do believe that sales, or I call it lead generation, it's really marketing. If you don't have a great strategy and implementation in place for that, you're going to really struggle. So I think that is, you're right. You're hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah,
Uh,
and again, I think, and I'm sure you see this as a finance guy all day long. When you see the sine wave, you already know what the problem is.
Mm. Yeah,
because
yeah.
that is the problem. If you have a sine wave in the business, some years are really good, some years not so much. And then you go, what do I do that I'm not mastering that? Well, what you're not doing is you are only looking for jobs when you need to find them, and then you stop when you get too busy executing them. And that brings us to the second piece of the alignment, which is then workplace unification. And I call this workplace unification, some people call it inclusion, they call it diversity, they call it all kinds of things. But I looked at it and I said, I don't even want to use those terms because they're so charged right now. But when we look at the workplace unification, at what needs to happen on a team level, right? What are the things that the teams really need? Number one, they need to have the systems that we just spoke about that support the teams in doing these jobs and in executing on these projects. And if the systems are not working, your team cannot perform. So and sometimes it's really simple things when business owners are wanting to save money on something, a productivity tool or something that could really help them, but it's a couple $1,000s and then they don't want to spend the money, but they don't realize that it does the job of a full person. I see this all the time, Steve, in project management software. I mean, if you run a business, you don't have a project management software. Um, I don't even know how that's going to work because good project management software is doing the job of a full project manager.
Yeah. Like
And
CRM system too. If you don't have a CRM system, how do you stay in touch with your clients? How do you collect information? How do you know what's been going on with them? I can't see how you could run a business without a CRM system.
exactly. And yet I just spoke to a business owner last week and I asked her if she was on what accounting system she was using, and she wasn't even on QuickBooks Pro, and she hadn't even incorporated. And so I said to her, at the kind of money you're making, this is reckless,
Yeah.
to not protect yourself. So systems, on the workplace unification. The second piece of the workplace unification is then the actual team. And here we look at, are you doing mini me cloning, which I'm sure you see all the time where the business owner just wants to hire people that are just like him or her because they are so good at so many different things. Stop it. You have to have a proper hierarchy. You have to have a proper organizational structure in place, and you have to design it in such a way that as you grow, the structure can grow accordingly, and you can find subject matter experts in a specific category, because it's much harder to find somebody who's like you versus finding a sales manager, or versus finding somebody who can do project management, or who is a coordinator, or who is a marketing or branding person or communications expert. So, and the final piece on these three is the leader has to be, you know, connected to the team. And here I find, and I don't know if you see this a lot, but I find a lot of times that business owners get so busy that they're not communicating properly and consistently. And the danger here is, and that's why we call it unification, is if you don't communicate with your team about what you want them to know, they will get the information somewhere else, and you have no idea where that is, what they're listening to, because we know that media is biased. We know that search engines are biased. We know that if I already have a certain belief system, that when I go and search for something, the internet is here to agree with what I already believe in. And if that's not aligned, that's why we call alignment, with the company's philosophy, now you are creating this void of people feeling that they need to be adding more information to their repertoire, but they're going somewhere else. And that information could be contradictory to what your business actually needs. So, again, for business alignment, the second pillar is workplace unification, systems, teams, and the leader.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, right? When I remember I remember what it was like when I started my first company, and you know, like now this is all intuitive what you're talking about for me. After 25 years, this is all intuitive. In fact, what was really interesting is, 6 years ago, we one of the other companies I own is called Elite Funeral Funding, and my business partner, we're co-owners in it, and we have somebody that runs it. But we, my business partner and I, were so experienced in building companies, and we had been doing it for so long that when 5 years ago, when we 5 or 6 years ago, when we started Elite, it was okay. What accounting packages are we going to use? Okay, what's our lead generation strategy? Okay, what type of people are we going to hire? What's their job description? What's the mission of the organization? Okay, who's responsible for what? Okay, blah blah. Rates. What's our CRM system? Okay, what's the processes for all this? It was like within 3 months, we got it like up to a point where companies in the past that I had were. It took 3 years to get to that point because we just knew all the different things that needed to get done, and we got it done super, super fast. But I remember going back to my first company where I had a team of like 20 people, I think, after about a year and a half. It was a really fast growing company. I wasn't a good leader. I didn't know, the three pillars. Even if you just not even put it into those groups, I think I did for lead generation at the time. It was hiring a salesperson, giving them a phone or giving her a phone saying, this is what we do, go find it,
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the reasons I became an evangelist when it came for getting leads coming into you was because I was so sick and tired of having to try to find the best salespeople, hiring the wrong salespeople, and then if I hired the right one, being so dependent on that salesperson, I said, now I'm going to get the leads coming in. That way, if they leave, I'm still good, and I don't have to hire as many good people if I have the leads coming in. But the net amount here, based on what you're saying, is all these steps are just critical to growth, aren't they?
Yes, because what you're talking about is really the foundational aspect, and when we have built more than one business, and I've built, I don't even know how many business models for how many clients. I mean, to me, this is all, it all has to be aligned with who you are. But I call them these foundational elements. There is no shortcutting here, or there is no skipping, because if on the foundation you are missing the steel and the cement, it can be absolutely disastrous. Or if all these pieces just need to be properly aligned, and then you are absolutely correct. Once you learn it, and again, I said it was easy. I didn't say, it's not a complicated process, it's an easy process, but it's work. And so oftentimes, because we get overwhelmed and we get sidetracked, and that's, where you said the business consultant coach comes in. That's what we do, is we come in and we help business owners that are just like all over the place, or that are not seeing the results, to say, okay, let's
Yeah.
pull it together. What are your 3 ideas that you need to implement that are the fastest way to the cash? Or sometimes when they're in absolute burnout, to say, well, what can we do now to avoid the burnout, to get you back to a balance? What do we need to put in place for you? And maybe we have a strategy where they, for 6 months, just need to stay on status quo until we fix everything underneath of them, including the communication aspect, and building the systems and the processes, and making sure that that all runs before we can accelerate growth again. But, I have a client who has accelerated growth dramatically. And so he grew at 3.5 rate over 1 year, which is
Mm.
considered a quantum leap. The problem is, you know, he's a very strong business owner. And typically, as a business owner by yourself, you can get to about 1 million. And that's how much you can handle as a single person, or as a person
Mm.
with an assistant. Once it gets beyond that, you're done. I mean, then we just need to sit there and do the stopwatch and see when it's going to happen to you. And because it's inevitably going to happen that you burn out and crash. And so he took that to about 3.5 million. And as a result of it, he works 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he hates his life. And now he's at the point where he wants to crash and burn the plane because he can't handle it anymore, because he did not do the foundational pieces. He didn't build the team and he didn't build the systems ahead of time. He only focused on business development, and he got stuck in business development, but never did the other two pieces. And now it's all that's coming in as jobs, but the rest is not working. And so that's the danger. And that really leads us to the third piece of the alignment process, and that is, now we're going into the leadership piece. And leadership, very very unlike what most people say, it's not just about you. It is about the vision and the mission. So the idea has to be very clear in the head of the leader, because he has to communicate it to the team. If the leader fails to be, because this, I think, especially today with the new generation, I don't know what you're seeing on your end, but we are seeing a lot, not just with millennials, but specifically with Gen Z, that unless it's about, this is what we stand for, this is what we do for our clients, this is why we're in business, you're going to have a hard time getting your team motivated and having your team show up, because they don't want to just have a job. Baby boomers wanted a job that afforded them that white picket fence dream. The new generations don't care about the white picket fence. They care about on whether they feel that burning desire to participate in something that's greater than they are. And so again, on the alignment is the leader clear on what the idea is? Does the leader communicate it clearly to the team? And then the personal leadership development. This is an interesting piece. I don't know how many times I've seen this, and I bet you've seen this thousands of times, where the leader tells you one thing, and then you talk to the team, and the team goes like, nope, no, he's not like that at all. Where the leader goes and says, I'm a great leader, and they love me, and I'm amazing, and things couldn't go better. And then you talk to the team, and they go, the guy's a jerk, or
Yeah.
she's really difficult to work with. So leadership is not determined by what you think. Leadership is determined by what other people think about your leadership capabilities. And if you do not get that feedback, you have no idea if you're a good leader or not.
Yeah, well, you want to be humbled, get a 360-degree review of what people think of you, and that humbles you, and it makes you a better leader too. I there's something that I wanted to ask you. Do you think it's easier to be an entrepreneur, a business owner today than it was 20 years ago?
I want to say, for me personally, I think it is a lot easier, because just, as I said, just having a project management software saves you a full
Yeah,
person.
I think it
I
is. Yeah, I think it is, because there are, they've made owning a business and entrepreneurship, you know, more of a definable science, where if you just kind of follow these steps,
You're good.
you're going to reduce your risk, right? You're going to reduce your risk. Let's use your example of the project management software. You know, one thing that's amazing about software is that somebody who's really, really good at what you want to do has put the best practices together and then listened to other customers to improve that software, so that you have best practices that came from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people when it came to, for example, project management software. Same thing with CRM systems. That software is one angle of that, but just what you're talking about in regards to three pillars. If you took somebody who's 22 years old, fresh out of college, and you said to them, here, I want you to implement these 3 pillars and make sure they understand it. I think that they would really be able to reduce their risk of failure so much greater. Would you agree?
I agree with this 100%. I mean, remember when we had FileMaker Pro and then we had to figure out as business owners on how to program the damn thing?
Yeah.
And then we'd be sitting there with the programmer and the programmer said, "What do you want me to do?" And then you had this like look of fear on your face and you go like, I don't even know what I should be asking for. Okay, so there's a name field, first name, last name. There's an email field.
Yeah.
And and as you sort of figured out how the business ran, you added things, but you each of us had to figure it out on our own until somebody says, that's just ridiculous. How about I'll make some templates and sell that? And then everybody went like, it was a sigh of relief. And then that idea just got extrapolated forward significantly. So it is much easier to run a business today. What is not easier is to have that unique differentiation factor. And
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of the pitfalls of businesses are that I see, where business owners are just so unclear or afraid to say, what is it that makes you stand out? And then because they need the business. So when somebody says, well, can you do that? Then they say, oh yeah, and I can do that, and I can do that, and I can do that. And it becomes this convoluted, diluted mess of non-specific, a non-specific business idea. And that's where the mindset piece comes in, obviously, that you and I have talked about in a previous interview, where unless you are very clear about what it is that you believe in, then it's going to be very difficult. And a lot of business owners, and I really blame internet marketers for that, Stephen, is they always make it about the money and the toys and the car and the this and the that and the that. If money is all that is the idea for a business, I have my challenges with that. I find that businesses that are really connected to their vision tend to do a lot better in the long run, because the passion is for making an impact, not making dollars. Because if you only make dollars and you don't have your heart, your soul, your purpose filled with something that you're doing it for, then you have the dollars in the bank and you're miserable. So that's probably the one thing in the alignment piece where, for me personally, I differentiate myself from other business consultants or coaches that just teach the systems, and they think the system is everything. The system is great, but the system is not everything. You as a business owner have to thrive in the system yourself. So we have to put you in the center.
Yeah. I think the thing that I've learned is, I've met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of business owners and become very close friends with lots and lots of people who own businesses. And what's obvious to me is that when you reach certain levels in revenue, it you reach those levels mostly because of skill set of what you've implemented. So in other words, is somebody who is at $10 million in revenue, right? There has to be some leadership skills that they've developed that they're better at than someone who is at 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time frame, let's say, same amount of time in business. So, but in other words, the person who's at 10 million, one of the leadership traits they have to be is they have to be working on the business and not in the business. At 1 million, you don't see that. The person's still working in the business, right? And that's fine because they're learning the business from the inside out. They're still growing. Now, when they go from 1 million to 3 million, they're starting to transition. They're starting to transition where maybe 50% of their time is in the business and 50% of the time is working on the business. They're hiring people. That people are taking over responsibilities of what the owner used to do. This is just one example.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to say here is, to me, you can go pretty far in business if you are just learning a lot about how to grow your business, following these 3 pillars. If you just walked away from today's podcast and you said, I'm going to start at the first pillar, which is business development, and I'm really going to make sure that we have our processes down, right? And I mean, I would be honest with everybody. I would just hire Beate. I would hire her in a second, because the fact is if any coach is going to be any good, they're going to by far make up for the money that you pay them. And the other,
Well,
I had a coach for 10 years.
yeah.
Okay. And, not only that, not only did she help me stay focused, but she also helped me stay sane as well. Because at the time, I was the only owner of the company, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So that, to have somebody there to help you think through your ideas and get it down to something simple, it's very powerful.
Well, I mean, it's an equation. It's either time or money. You pay for it either way. And so, I sometimes compare it. A growth strategy is not that we all go to a Formula One race, and we all take a car. And then those of us who don't die succeed. That's a very expensive way to learn. How about we take some driving lessons with someone who knows how to even operate the car, has been on a racetrack before, who you can give you some who says don't do that because that would be a really bad mistake. So, but I believe that, as you said, at a certain level of leadership, it's very rarely I see leaders that have not had a consultant or are not open to the ideas of bringing people on. There comes a point in your business where you need subject matter experts to just help map it out for you. Or, oftentimes the way I describe the process, because I'm all about processes and systems and developing a strategy. So I see that the ideas are typically already all out there, but they're like puzzle pieces and they're all floating in all these different places. My job is to listen, to take the puzzle pieces and assemble them so that there is a cohesive picture, and then turn that into a strategic plan and help the business owners or the company to go out and then follow this plan and know what they need to be doing. We had a client in a nonprofit, and they are at a $25 million company, and they came to us because they wanted us to help them map out their process, because they were leading by meetings, right? So the whole team was constantly in meetings to keep each other abreast. And when we looked into it, and I took him through the strategy of how we go through the what's next process, we found that the incoming sales requests went to the customization department that customizes complicated jobs. What do you think happened to every single job that came in the door?
It would probably take forever to get
Every
responded
single
to.
job was customized.
Yeah.
And so we told them that in the process, they tried to start at step 3 in their systems. They didn't even have step 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And so we said you need a traffic controller in the front who is qualified to send jobs to the right direction, and only
standardize
it. And then you need to build an off-the-shelf product, which they had, and then have a sales department that the first call goes to the sales department whose first objective is to sell off-the-shelf stuff before it goes to customization. I mean, and they didn't see it. And there were 100 people working there, and none of them saw that. And for us, I mean, it took us an hour to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes what happens is an organization can grow awfully fast, and you just lose sight of everything, right?
Because it's not aligned.
Right. That's why it's good to start off your company with these processes at first, and then you build the company around. I'm a big process and systems guy. So you're talking yeah, you're talking my language,
I know,
right?
right? You and I,
Yeah,
we're like
yeah.
brother and sister
But
from a different mother, right?
yeah, but you know what? But if you talk to my business partner, he would, you know, I don't. He kind of doesn't like the processes and procedures. He likes freewheeling a little more, and so that's why him and I are really great um, um, co-owners together. We kind of have different skill sets.
But that's a great thing that you say that, because I want to be very clear about this, that the piece I do is only one piece, right?
Hmm.
This is just about the structure and the foundation, making sure everything operates. But when we look at teams and we look at partnerships, we don't want everybody to be like us. We specifically look for people that are more empathetic, that can connect with people on a really deep emotional level, that are good storytellers, that are fulfilling the pieces that processes and systems can do. Because if people don't want to use processes and systems because they are too heartless, you're toast too. So again, you have to build it with the people in mind to make sure that, and again, I had another client, another nonprofit that was at about 6 million, and they insisted that their processes worked, but nobody was using them.
Hmm.
And so I said, your process by itself might work, but it doesn't work because your people are not using it.
Yeah, it
And I
definitely
said,
doesn't
so
work.
so you're going to fire everybody, or you're going to change your
Yeah,
process? Which which
yeah.
which which do you think is the smarter way to go about it? And they were pushing back hard. I said, well, you hired me to help you with retention. And so let me tell you how we're going to increase the retention. Let's build a process that's actually built with the people in mind instead of by somebody who never even talked to them.
Yeah, let me share some insight with you that I learned. One of the things I learned is don't use the word system and process, because people hate systems and processes, right? I use the word best practice.
Nice.
And yeah, and so what happens is when you use the word best practices, and when you actually are like one of the companies I had, we were really really good. We were in the Inc. 499 Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in the United States, and really great people I had working with me, and what I used to do was make them um, create the best practice for their job or whatever they were doing. And so, and then we would go through it. And I'd say, okay, tell me all the steps you do when you go to do this. Let's get it down in writing. And then let's look at it and see if there's any improvements we can make. And if and then see, in some cases, have measurements, right? And then we would constantly review that to see, are we doing the right things, and are the measurements correct? Are we achieving the goals that we had inside of it? And so when you change that idea beyond to best practices, you get more buy-in from everybody. And then what's really great about that best practice, of course, because when someone starts and they say, okay, what's the best practices for making a call on the client on the phone, right? And you say, okay, here's our best practices process that seems to work for everybody. It just completely changes the tone for how people view systems and processes.
I love that. I love that a lot, because people only buy into that which they themselves collaborate with, or where they feel
Right.
a part of them is in this. And so language is absolutely critical. And we work a lot with Myers-Briggs personality assessments,
Yep.
because we need to know how we need to address our partners and team members, and how we need to work with our clients, because somebody who is an introvert is going to react very different than an extrovert. Somebody who is an empath will react very differently to somebody who is very system oriented by nature. So we give them the language that they need to understand what we're trying to achieve, and then we help them understand the pieces that they're missing, because again, in the alignment, you're only as good as the team that you're able to inspire and the team you're able to get to perform.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head too when it came to you know, the terminology used. I think that I do think saying best practices in this case versus process and procedures, I think that they are kind of two different things too. I mean, one of the other things I think we did very well at was we didn't just document the process and procedures and then, file it away and never looked at it again. We were reviewing that. We would go back at that, and again, I tend to be a process and procedure type of guy. And one of the things that I certainly found is people that people that are doing the work, they want processes and procedures or best practices. They want that. Maybe the owners don't want it for themselves, but the people who are on the line, they kind of want to know, this is what I want to do. This is how to do things. This is what the process is. I think so. When we were talking before about owners that bring companies to new levels in revenue, I jumped ahead about leadership, but really the number one most important thing of going from 1 million to 10 million, in most industries, let's face it, is processes, procedures, or best practices. If you don't have those, you're just not going to get there.
No, and the why is so simple, because if it's in the business owner's head, it doesn't do anything for anyone else. And
Yeah.
especially if the business owner is an intuitive that does it intuitively and doesn't understand that what he's doing intuitively is a process that he follows or she follows, then that can never be written down. I work with a lot of intuitive business owners where we extracted. I have only a German can build a process for a system for developing systems. So I have actually a strategy, a product, or something that I offer to my clients where I help them build their system. And it's a system to build a system, because I have to help them to get their brain power focused so I can extract the information and then help them organize it, so then they can go out and say, this department is doing this, and here are the 10 pieces of it. And this department does this, and here are the 15 pieces of that. And this is how these two interact with each other. And you can only do that, if you're naturally wired for a process and systems, that's easy for you because your brain spits it out. But most people are not.
No. Yeah. 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 I know you're talking to the choir of me, so I get it. And I think most business owners that I've know and met, and I'm very close friends with, very few of them are process systems people. You know. Yeah. But there are some converts. Believe me, that they see once they reach a certain level and they're working those 60, 70-hour weeks, and they're like, I can't do this anymore.
It's unsustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unsustainable.
Do you sometimes think, it's actually a question for you that I have. Do you think that from your experience, this has something to do with control, that they don't want to give control over the baby up?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
I think that's it's but I also think that's a huge weakness. You have to be able to change. You have to be able to change and improve. Entrepreneurship is. I went to a great lecture once, and the guy wrote a book called Leap of Faith. And what he said is entrepreneurs are autodidactic. Good entrepreneurs are autodidactic, and that means self-taught. And you have to be able to change. If you're not going to change, then your business is going to stay the same size. You're going to keep hitting your head against the wall. I mean, I'm not saying I'm great at this either. What I'm saying is, listen, I wanted to be in my own business for the rest of my life. That's what was my goal. I said, I want to be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life. I don't want to have to work for somebody else. Okay. Number two, I want to make money. I want to make good money. I want to have these simple things in my life that I want. I want freedom. And the third thing is I want a company I'm really proud of. right? Now, I going back to what you're saying about, focusing on the vision. Unfortunately, not. I don't think any of my companies uh, ever had this grandiose vision that was going to make it compete or be better than Microsoft or Apple, or they just weren't those. The ideas weren't unique enough. They were very one was, but you got to have you. I think you got to know what you're playing with, right? If you're in this space, and maybe you can get the company to 10 million and 20 million, and that's the farthest it can go. There's a lot of businesses like that,
Yes.
and so I forgot what was your question again.
The question was, is it about control that many business owners
Yes,
are not wanting to surrender or wanting to stay in control?
maybe
And
maybe that's the issue with me. See, like I've always had I have dyslexia. And because I have dyslexia, I've always been good at finding ways for things to get done without
Mhm.
me, because I'm not very good at those things. So I'll find people to do them. And so for me, I don't care. I don't care if it gets done by me. I mean, I don't want to get it done by me. I want to get it done by somebody else, because there's other things that I want to do. I'm much better on the creative side. I'm much better on the um, building systems and thinking strategic side. That's where I'm strong in. So
Yeah,
I'm not a control freak.
right. And and let's just add one piece to it. And the reason this is so, so, so very important, it's the only way to sell a business.
Hmm.
The only way to sell a business
Yeah,
is if you built it with, and I love that, I'm going to use that, best practices, strategies, processes, and systems, where you can hand somebody the book of how it's done. That and only that is the value to somebody wanting to buy your company.
I agree with you. And I would add to that, there's two other things. One of them is, can you go away for 2 or 3 weeks and your business runs just as good as if you aren't there? And if you're there. So if that's the case, you have a sellable business. And then the second thing I would say is, build your business as if someone else is going to buy it and they're not taking you with it.
100%.
Right. And I
Yes.
think that if you go, like, just like with the processes that we talked about today, the 3 pillars,
Hmm.
if you start off with that in mind first, it's easier to build something than to come back and kind of apply the 3 pillars later on, which you can do. It's just easier if you did it in the beginning.
Yes, correct. And as you grow, that is a lot of times where business owners fall short because they don't know, or they're too busy, they don't pay attention to it, or they don't take that day out. And you said in the very beginning, you said you make it sound so easy. Most of this I'll do in a day or in 2 half days. My whole processes and systems and best practices for business owners are set out so we can literally hammer this out in virtually in 2 half days.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets any easier than that.
Yeah.
Because for that exact same reason, that I think if we try to make it too complex or too difficult or too daunting, we're not going to be seeing results. But if we go and we identify what needs to be done first, we laser focus on that and we fix that and we take care of that, and then we walk back and we see how the structure is changing and how now the workflow works, and then we do it again and we go in and we fix the next piece. That is the best way, I think, to address, I mean, in my experience at least, on how businesses grow rapidly, is because the minute you change one thing, all the other things are changing as well, and you don't really quite know where the chips are falling. I do not believe in hiring these big consulting firms that come in for an entire year, because all you're going to end up is with a whole bunch of stuff that is wrong, that you already knew is wrong, but by the time that book is out, things already have changed. So go find one thing, fix one thing, wait, see how the chips fall, go back in, take a look, take the next thing, fix that, step back, and keep doing that until you really feel that things are properly aligned. That's how we do it.
It's all good stuff. Listen, you and I could talk about this for
Forever.
forever, right? Listen, I would say that I have a lot of coaches on the show, right? And I really think you know what you're talking about. I would, you would be my type of coach. So,
Thank you.
just saying that. So, and so unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I would like to thank so very much Beate Chelette from Chelette Enterprises, aka the Growth Architect, for coming on today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. Beate, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I mean, if you heard something that is interesting to you, go to uncoverysession.com, fill it out, mention Stephen's name, and say you heard it on the podcast. I'd be happy to make 7 complimentary uncovery sessions available to the audience, or just reach out, email me at bc@beatechelette.com. I actually check my own email. And if you have questions, don't be a stranger. I always like to hear from the audience.
Good stuff. And for our listeners, or if you're interested out there, I tweet at Halasnik, Halasnik, and I always tweet daily, every weekday, about business and things that I'm working on or something that I read that I said, you know what, this is pretty good, I've been doing it for a long time. I think I have over 1,000 tweets out there now. And so everyone, I just want to thank you for listening. And please remember that if you take a step back, sometimes you can take 2 steps forward. And I think we really covered that really well today. So everybody, have a really great day. It's beautiful outside. Get outside, smell the roses. There's a reason why you're running your business is so you can get some free time. And, it's a good time to get out there before it starts to turn winter. Everybody, have a fantastic day.